Sziasztok! Itt vagyunk az Antal Publikáció és Képzés YouTube csatornáján. A nevem Olivia Antal, és gestalt szemléletű gestalt terapeuta vagyok, személyiségfejlesztéssel foglalkozom. A szenvedélyemnek élek éppen, és alapítottam egy kiadót 2022-ben, és ez a kiadó kiadta Elinor Greenberg, amerikai pszichoterapeuta könyvét, amely a borderline, nárcisztikus és szkizoid működésről szól. Az eredeti könyv az adaptációként hivatkozik a 3 személyiség típusra, és gyakorlatilag a könyv azt járja körül, hogy hogyan lesz a személyiség disorderből, a personality disorderből hogyan lesz adaptáció. Elinor Greenberg New Yorkban él, és részben Floridában, és ami összeköt minket, hogy Elinor gyakran tanít gestalt intézetekben, és nekem is volt szerencsém előadást hallani tőle, azon kívül a könyve egy alaptézis világszerte a gestalt terapeuták számára. Elinor Greenberg, PhD, elsősorban gestalt terapeutának vallja magát, de azért, hogy jobban értse, hogy mi történik, analitikusan is képződött. Elinor The Masters on Institute posztgraduális képzési intézetben végzett, ez pszichoanalitikusan orientált fejlődési ön- és tárgykapcsolati megközelítést tanít a személyiségzavarok elméletére és kezelésére. Emellett okleveles Erikson hipnoterapeuta, és szerepel a Certified Group Psychotherapist USA országos nyilvántartásában. Tanárként dolgozott a New York-i Gestalt Terápiai Intézetben és a Gestalt Pszichoterápiás és Képzési Központban. A Gestalt Review társszerkesztőjeként is elismerésre tett szert. Könyve világszerte ismert, ahogy már említettem, és ez az interjú arra jött létre, hogy jobban megismerjük a szerzőt, és minél többet megtudjunk arról, hogy ki is és hogyan közelít a munkájához, hogy mindannyian minél nagyobb képet kapjunk a könyv hátteréről. So now I switch to English. Elinor, highly welcome. I really very touched that finally we have a chance to meet. What's one word you would use to describe how you are feeling just now or today? One word. Therapeutic.
I have no one word.
No?
I have no one word. No one word. There's a lot going on in my brain. So I am eager. How's that for a word? Eager.
Eager for what?
Eager to begin, eager to be helpful, eager to communicate, eager to meet you.
Great.
Eager to do this and get it right. If I had to say one word, it's eager.
Eager, wonderful. So your whole existence is a help for the world. So, is there a morning ritual you never skip?
Yes, I'm very, kind of like conscious about this to keep in shape because there's a lot I want to do. There's a lot of people I want to teach, and it's really hard to find people. It's easy to find people to teach about borderline. I don't even have to worry about that because there's so many good people out there, so many types of therapy.
Yeah.
Schizoid is harder, but the people who are serious about teaching schizoid adaptations, there is more of them. It is really hard to find a person to teach who's serious about working with narcissism.
Yeah.
Because it is very difficult, and at some point you may get into certain kinds of difficulties.
Yes.
And I have one on my mind now. That's why when you asked what am I thinking of, I was thinking of a difficulty that had occurred before this, that I'm trying to figure out how to handle the right way. So I spend a lot of my time when things are going well, not thinking at all, just studying and doing stuff and writing, and then trying to strategize how to keep someone in therapy who's splitting on me, which is very common with my clients. And it's going to happen sometime, and then I try and save the therapy,
of course,
without giving up my soul.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because very often I'm being pressured to do things that I don't want to do, that I don't think are right for the client.
Mm-hmm.
And the client has a limited view because they don't understand. If they had understood their own mind and their therapy, they wouldn't need me. Usually I'm not the first therapist. I'm rarely anyone's first therapist.
Yeah.
I'm usually the third therapist.
Wow.
And I prefer it that way.
Yeah.
Because when it comes to the adaptations, I find people are more likely to appreciate what I bring to the table. But they're not going to like, if they're a narcissist, me being in control. It's as simple as that.
Yeah, I know. Yeah. So, Elinor, I have 10 questions for you, and just let me know if you think it's interesting enough for you to answer, and we can skip if you don't like them. The first question is, what are the most common misconceptions people still have about personality disorders, despite increasing awareness?
The thing that's most misunderstood is that this is not an adaptation. This is a fixed thing, and we just have to accept it, that it's a disorder. Well, it is a disorder because that gives us a diagnosis. But we know if it's an adaptation, as I believe it to be, that occurs in early childhood and continues, it's just a set of habits. And we know it's hard to change habits, but it's possible. So if we stop seeing this from the lens of, oh, this is a terrible, terrible thing that person have to suffer with, it's just a set of habits that are causing problems in adulthood that was probably much more useful as a young child to get what they needed from the family, or was an attempt to be useful.
Yeah.
And so this is the biggest misunderstanding. I see people keep telling me you can't treat narcissism. I say I do it all the time. I started with borderline before there was the treatments there are today, when there are only the object relations treatments. And people told me the same thing then. And now, of course, there are these wonderful treatments that people know about, like dialectical behavior therapy, schema therapy, Masterson's object relations therapy. People have a choice now of what level of treatment. And so I think we've pretty well proven that these things are treatable, but because they're not treatable in every case by the methods we currently have, people get very discouraged. And most therapists, as you well know, do not study every method. They study something congenial and available to them in their country that works for them, that they think would be a good thing to study and they have access to. And then they try and adapt it to their client. Sometimes this works, many times because it's not specialized for that personality disorder. The therapist is doing their best stumbling around, but they don't have in their head a full therapy. They've never been told, and they don't have a lot of supervision available very often. So we don't have successes in every case, and I won't be a success with everyone. I will be a success with a percentage of highly motivated, intelligent people who are willing to put aside their preconceptions about what they want. What they want and what they need are often very different things.
Yes. Just like a Gestalt therapist, actually the paradoxical theory of change already helped a client to move on the scale.
We have people who are easier or harder on a spectrum. Under the rubric, I was just taking, on narcissistic personality disorder, borderline personality disorder. In my book, I have that article, Splash.
Yeah, I know.
And in Splash, I talk about getting diagnosis and just looking at how much the person can take care of their own needs. Can they soothe themselves? How at risk are they for not being able to tolerate what's happening to them and respond in a way that doesn't blow up their life. And so I found that it wasn't particular to a particular diagnosis, that my clients who were less self-reliant and more willing to, I really kind of saw that. I'm trying to think of a better way to explain it. People who read your book in the translation will be able to read this in great detail. So I don't know what chapter it is in yours, Splash, but read Splash.
Yeah, I know.
Because I get totally away from diagnosis and I look at this problem from another direction entirely. And in that, I go for high, moderate, and low splash people. And low splash people have decided they don't want to involve other people in their private problems that very much. They're doing their best to find solutions on their own. High splash people have so few resources that it's like a cry for help from a small child. They're screaming, they're crying, and everybody knows there's something going on, and they're involving everyone around them is being sucked into, whether they intend to or not, and influenced by whatever is happening to them.
Yeah.
And I say these are the harder people to treat because they have a longer way to go. Because if someone sees that they have to solve this problem with other people's help, but the most of the problem has to be solved in their brain by them, by trying over and over again to inhibit what they know is a bad path and a bad response, like screaming in the street. Let's just take someone that screams at their partner in the street. They don't like what their partner's doing, and instead of waiting till they get home and discussing it, they're screaming at their partner. So now everybody hears them. This does not solve their problem at all. Yeah, it's not a useful response.
Yeah, it solves the drama if the partner knows that it's a kind of crying for help, action for help, and the partner don't step into the quarrel, actually, but he knows.
That's right. So we have a lot of things that are not helpful, but the person doesn't have the tools yet. So every time we do something that's not helpful, that means we don't have a tool we need. It's very, very simple. If we take it away from the diagnosis, we're in a very simple situation. If I run out of tools with a client, I'm not going to be able to do my best work.
Yeah.
One of the reasons I'm certified in 4 kinds of surgeries, I kept running out of tools. I knew I was out of tools. I had a client with a problem. I wanted to help. And I did every tool I had. First, I started with my Gestalt therapy tools.
Mm-hmm.
Then I started with if they had other types of problems, I had to study with the analysts. And then I chose James Masterson because his work was very congruent, even though it doesn't sound like it is, with Gestalt therapy, because he worked in the present, in the now. Yeah. Masterson used to tell us, you don't say mother till they say mother.
Oh.
For borderline.
Yeah.
Why? He says, because we rob them of the opportunity to do the therapy as they need it. And we rob them of the ability to have the insight. Yeah. So that was fine very often. That's a now-centered, present-centered therapy. Gestalt therapy is a present-centered therapy. There's a crossover. In Gestalt therapy, our goal is to bring what is out of awareness into awareness. Then the person has both things. If you're borderline, what you want to do, which is not good for you, but is an old habit, and what you're not looking at, that might be the negative result of that, what you do. And we're told, just as Masterson teaches, not to tell them in that case what to do, but bring them with this conflict into the therapy. In Gestalt, we may do it by role-playing, by having them put one side that wants to do it this way in the chair, or speak for that side, and then talk about some side that sees something else as possible. Masterson didn't use chairs. He would use, you would tell them, you will kind of do what I call battery packing their ego. You would use your healthy reality ego, presumably, who can see what is going on, and then bring into awareness something that is out of awareness for them. So there's lots of different ways of doing this. Now, this was fine, and it worked well for my borderline. But when I got to, and worked well for schizoids, I can let them lead the therapy. When I reviewed the therapy of narcissism, it did not work well. Masterson advised being empathic as long as they needed to, and saying everything from their point of view. This was, for the lower functioning clients, that could take a year or two. The self-psychologists believe in that, and it's one of their main methods, that type of empathy. Now, at 80 years old, I cannot spend 2 years being empathic, hoping behind hope that they're going to get insight. So when I looked back at the time when I looked back at this, I invented the newer version of my therapy during Quora because I wasn't going out. I wasn't going to restaurants. I wasn't going to conferences in person. I had time on my hands. So I reviewed 45 years of treatment of narcissists in my practice, the ones that worked, the ones that didn't work at all, the ones that partially worked. And I made a list of all the things that I thought made the therapy take longer than it needed. And I decided to do something radical. Now, when I first started diagnosing, that was radical in Gestalt therapy. I was criticized up and down. Every workshop I ever gave, I had to explain why I was pathologizing people with a diagnosis. I talk about that in the intro to my book. I said, because it works. I am devoted to my client's best interests. If it doesn't work in therapy, I'm not going to do it. I don't care who tells me to do it. So I reached this point when I realized that I was not doing as efficient a therapy for narcissism as I was for borderline and schizoid, because they were not on their own ever getting to the point. Everything that happened was defense. And so it wasn't working. Well, once I admitted that it wasn't working, I made a list of, okay, if I was going to invent a totally new therapy, and I could throw out anything, I wasn't going to be beholden to Freud, Masterson, Fritz Perls, Richard Kitzler, anyone in the world, just my own brain. What would I do different?
Wow. And regarding the 3 adaptations, have you ever changed your own perspective or understanding?
Yes, this was a perspective change that I did 5 years ago during COVID. Because up till then, I'm a very good student. I decided to study this when I was inventing my own fix for borderline, and I realized that's inefficient. That there were other people that had already been down this road, and that first I should study with everybody who's been down this road who I thought was any good. I did that. I took every class I could find on borderline that would let me in New York. I took class with William Allison White. Pointless. I went to lecture there. Pointless. They didn't have the answer for me. Now, that may work for other people. I'm just giving you my point of view. For my work, I went to these classes, I learned nothing. So then I started studying other people. Learned nothing. This is before Marsha Linehan had invented her therapy. So I'm studying analytic treatments for borderline personality disorder, and I'm not liking any of them. I flew to Harvard from New York for continuing education because I thought maybe out in Harvard, I had great respect for the teachers there. They knew a lot. They were having conferences on this area on personality disorders. So I listened to Otto Kernberg, who was my other choice to study with. He's in New York. And he was very harsh with his clients. And I didn't believe I could be that harsh.
Mm-hmm.
I also studied Gerald Adler. I studied with a wonderful Iranian psychiatrist through continuing ed in up on the Cape too. What's his name? I just forgot his name for the moment. He had a short-term therapy. None of them were useful to me. I couldn't do either. They didn't work. They took too long, or they were not congruent with my personality and what I was able to do. So this is a factor. When you're choosing a therapy, you have to choose a therapy you can do.
Yeah.
So I chose what I could do.
And how did it start that you started to help many professionals understand complex patterns in a more digestible way? What is your success in teaching? How come we love you so much?
Okay, well, here's what happened. I found these studies very, 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 very difficult. I cried when I read Otto Kernberg's book, Severe Personality Disorders, I think it was. I would argue I didn't understand, there weren't enough examples. I didn't understand the language. I wanted more clarity. I thought many of the people were using too much jargon. I had to learn, I spent years learning jargon like Masterson's part-object relations unit, withdrawing object relations unit versus rewarding object relations unit. I can remember that because we could say Roru or Waru. I cannot remember the actual names for the parts he gave to the narcissistic units. I can remember the concept. So I said, well, this is really, I think that the words we're using need to be translated into common English.
Yeah.
And if I know it well enough, I can do it. I also made a vow of clarity that I was going to take an enormous risk and be bold and brave and have everybody understand every word I'm saying. And I will simplify it into, and if they don't, at least they will, if they think I'm wrong, they'll know what I mean. And they'll be able to say, well, she's wrong. When I read Kernberg, I could not critique Kernberg because I could not understand everything he was saying.
Yeah.
Now, I studied him again with Masterson, and I still didn't understand everything he was saying. And he uses different setup for borderline than I was using. He has borderline organization of the personality, which could be any adaptation, and he also has borderline personality disorder. I find that confusing.
Yes.
So what people like about me is I said, there's no reason not to have a good time here. Let's be funny. Let's use lots of examples, and let me put it in plain English. And I took a vow that whatever I learned, no matter how small, I would present it at a Gestalt therapy conference or at a conference. And so I did that. And I was very nervous. My voice used to shake. And then I realized that as a Gestalt therapist, we were making another mistake. No Gestalt therapist I knew before me had handouts for their workshops.
Oh.
Why? We were told that Gestalt therapy, excitement and growth, Pearls, Hefferlein, and Goodman, was made difficult and it wasn't explained simply to discourage introjection. Isidore Fromm, my teacher, told me that. He was one of the foremost theoreticians in Gestalt therapy. And he was very conveniently located for me. He was 5 blocks away from my house. So I studied with him. He was smart. He was convenient. He let me into his group. He was very well respected at the New York Institute. However, there were these ideas that I didn't, always agree with about what to do and what was good.
And you started to give handouts. When was that?
So with handouts, I said, okay, I don't care. I had studied learning. One of the advantages that I have that many Gestalt therapists in New York at the time did not have. I have a bachelor's in psychology from Columbia University. I have a master's in psychology from the New School. I have a PhD in psychology from the New School. I took psychology classes in high school. I have studied more psychology than most Gestalt therapists. So therefore, I had also studied experimental psychology in depth, social psychology, learning theory, and child development as part of my classwork. I spent 7 years getting my bachelor's degree so I could take it slower, afford it, and learn. My goal was not to get the degree. My goal was to learn.
Yeah.
That's a different goal.
Yeah.
I spent 6 years on my master's PhD.
Because you had to work meanwhile, right?
That's right.
Yeah, it was relating to how wonderful your teaching style is. How come
so thank you for that. I'm so happy about it. So what I did is I realized in my learning courses, they taught us that when you learn something, this fear of introjection is ridiculous. We learn things by rote initially. We don't understand it. We learn it through introjection. Then once we have learned it, we really don't understand it deeply. Then we can gradually assimilate it by looking for examples in everyday life.
Yeah.
And so this whole prohibition about introjection, to me, is nonsense. If it stays as an introjection, okay, I understand that. But most people assimilate. Most people start to think at some point, is this right? Is this wrong? Is there a better way of doing it? And they start to think about, well, what did Elinor really mean? And then they go back and they look things up. So then I realized that there was no reason not to write out. When I took all these classes and got certified in all these types of therapy, and yet I remembered, I'm a good student, really. I have a good memory. I didn't remember much from any of these classes.
Yeah.
If I remembered one thing correctly that I could use, I would put it to use right away after I took the class, and that was it.
Yeah.
Now, if I had a handout, a summary from that person, and a list of what I was supposed to know, just a page or two of each thing, that would be so helpful, I thought, in their words, because there's so many things I'd like to ask Masterson, and he's dead. He died in 2010 of dementia. So there wasn't much you could ask him in his last few years. And so I said, well, I'm going to experiment and I'm going to write handouts in outline form, and the people can add to them in any way. Now, what was interesting was Masterson did a little of this at his conferences. He handed out forms with questions and a space for you to fill in what you were learning as you listened to him.
So good.
I thought, I want people to listen to me and not be so focused on writing because they were afraid of missing something. So I took away the fear of missing something important that I wasn't saying by writing up what I thought was important.
Yeah, great.
And referencing it. So that was what made it easier for people, because what I said was collect my handouts. For the Gestalt Center of New York, there's 8 sessions that I do on personality disorders. I said, put them together in a little book. Put holes in them if you like, print it, make your own book. And then before you're working with a client that's narcissistic, that's referred to you, take out the narcissistic handouts, read the summary of the narcissistic problems, read the summary of the narcissistic therapy that I do to get your brain in the game.
Yeah.
So at least you'll have an idea. You're not going to reread my whole book section on narcissism. Yeah. I know that. I wasn't rereading all of Masterson before I started with the narcissist thing. Yeah. I reread my outline that I had of what to do and his main interventions, and I learned those very well. Right. So that's what I think made me different. And then I started expanding on it. And then I started writing it for the general public as well, with the Psychology Today and the Quora articles, and that got me even simpler.
Yeah.
So that's what I think. I think it's because I don't take myself that seriously. I take the work seriously, but I'm not dedicated to the jargon.
Yeah.
I hate the jargon, actually, personally.
So if you were write a sequel to your book, what new themes or patterns would you want to explore?
I have so much I would like to write. That's why one of the things also, there was a problem. Everyone told me the reason I self-published is I wanted to write the book as soon as possible, and I wanted to not have to do a good book. I know what publishers wanted, and they wanted even. They want every chapter about the same length. I knew what I was presenting was peer-reviewed papers that I get asked for all the time, plus handouts that I get asked for all the time. So I know it's a very uneven book. Chapter 13, people don't even, has schizoid dreams and contact difficulties. In chapter 3, I explained schizoid, and they were going to tell me long tangential stories that they believe show them in a good light. All of that turned out to be a waste of time. I am not their problem. Their problem started before the age of 5. In their family, their wife or husband is not their problem. They are triggering the narcissistic adaptation. But just because I triggered your adaptation doesn't mean I'm doing anything wrong.
Yeah.
It means you have an adaptation that is easily triggered. And the higher your splash rate, the more miserable you're going to try and make my life because I said or did something you didn't like. Normal people can absorb that and say, okay, I don't like it, but maybe it's for my benefit. Let me ask her. Let's talk about it at least.
Yeah. And it's a it's a kind of education to raise the client's awareness to know that he's actually pushed with his adaptation recall. And he knows right then that he now acted as with a narcissistic adaptation in the situation, and he can change even, so it's
that's right. And the deal that I make with my 10% in the beginning, who I'm writing up now, is that these rules that it is not my problem that you became a narcissist. It is not your wife's problem. I am a flawed therapist. I will tell you this right at the beginning. I'm a flawed human being. I'm not perfect. I'm not the best therapist in the world. I'm not the only therapist in the world, but I have invented this one thing that works well. And if you accept it, I will do therapy with you. If you won't accept it, I can't take you as a client because I'm not going to do the other therapy. It takes twice a week for 10 years, if it even works at all.
Yeah. Yes.
And I don't have twice a week. You don't want to come to me twice a week.
Yeah.
I can no longer see clients twice a week unless it's an emergency because I have health issues.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spend 10 years on your therapy before I find out if it's working.
Yeah. But it's a kind of also perception, how you perceive yourself, a healer or a partner in the healing process. So that's the difference.
That's right. It's a very different presentation than my narcissists get from me than my schizoid, my borderline clients. And they don't like, a lot of them do not like it, but they agree reluctantly because I see the CEOs of companies. I see one of the things that I ask in the first session, I tell them in the new therapy for narcissism that I would want to put in my book, is this therapy takes about 5 years.
But you cannot tell this.
I will commit to you. That's my best guess. If we do it once a week, you have to at home do all the work that we would be doing in the second session. You are going to have homework for every day of the week. Now, as a Gestalt therapist, we're not taught to give homework automatically. Analysts don't believe in giving homework. The ones I studied with, they believe it's non-analytical, it's intrusive. You have to wait for them to discover you know what I mean? And they have to agree that they're going to do all this extra work. They're going to read anything I assign them to read. They're going to learn to meditate. They're going to learn mindfulness. They're going to learn Stoic philosophy. I use Stoic philosophy a lot with the guys because they're reading it. It's a very male philosophy, but it's very pragmatic and useful. And CBT, cognitive behavior therapy, has a lot of Stoic philosophy in it. I don't know if you know this about it or if you study it, but I'm studying the Stoics on my own at night, and mindfulness.
Yeah.
And so I have these things that people say what are you doing? Is it DBT? I say, no, it's not DBT. It's narcissistic relation. I'll tell you the most radical thing I do. I forget this because I forget how radical it is because I'm doing it every day.
What?
Is I am doing the whole therapy. I could not find couples therapists anywhere in America, with the exception of maybe Terry Real and the guy in Boston who's working with narcissists. I forget his name right now. And other than that, they are trained not to treat narcissists. I did a class 1 Gottman level recently, a couple of years ago, to see if studying with the Gottmans, maybe I would learn. I had studied couple therapy, but not intensely enough for me to be comfortable. And I don't believe people should be doing it if they didn't study it intensely enough to get supervised and to learn the ins and outs. I was winging it because people were sending all their narcissists to me because they weren't having, the couple therapist was falling for the narcissistic BS. Yeah. And the narcissists were running from the room once you asked them to do anything. Yeah. So I was giving it a shot. And I don't want to, at this stage of my life, I found I didn't have the stamina to retrain as a full couple therapist. But I realized I could do the entire therapy through a very narrow lens. Uh-huh. In the new is I do narcissistic relationship therapy. We're going to work on your narcissism, I tell them, through the lens of how intergenerational trauma, or if you didn't have trauma being raised by the narcissist in your life, there's a narcissist in their family as a mother or father, or as a grandfather who raised them, negatively impacted your ability to be a good spouse and parent. Yeah. So that's the lens we're going to look at everything through. And that's how we're going to tell when you're getting better or when you're worse or when you're splitting. Because we're only going to be talking about your relationship with your wife and children. Or if it's a works thing that they're coming for, your relationships with your coworkers or your boss or your underlings. Yeah. So it's a relationship-oriented therapy, which is very different than regular Gestalt therapy.
And if you consist this homework, then isn't it dangerous to take you into a hierarchy? I mean, take you up as a kind of teacher or somebody.
Oh, you mean to idealize me? No, to a narcissist, you have to be idealizable. They won't be able to do therapy with someone they don't idealize. I found this out very reluctantly because I am uncomfortable being idealized in that fashion, or I was at the beginning. So I would tell them, I am not because I know if I'm on that thing, I'm going to come down. I am not perfect. So in the beginning, I because I'm trained and my heart was with Gestalt therapy. I'm also Aquarian, for God's sakes. I'm an egalitarian person. I didn't want to learn a hierarchical therapy for that reason. People call me by my first name. I'm Elinor. I'm not Dr. Greenberg. Some people insist on calling me Dr. Greenberg anyway. But so, when I tried to explain to people not to idealize me, what happened is either they idealized me more and said, oh, you're just being modest. Isn't this wonderful? This just proves how modest you are. When they want to see what happens with narcissism and all the things. Here's something for the listeners to understand. People need to go back to where they left off with their parents when their development stopped. Mm-hmm. It stopped at an age when they were idolizing their parents. So they need me to be I realized, they need me to be an idealizable parent figure for them, an idealizable figure, in order to get they could not be authentic with the person they idealized as a child.
Yeah.
They could not do or say what they wanted to say developmentally. They often had to skip developmental stages. Like if they had a parent who was an exhibitionist narcissist who didn't like them showing off. And little kids, I don't know, do you have children? People watching, some will have children. All kids go, Mommy, Daddy, watch me do this. Look at me.
Yes.
In an adult, that can sound narcissistic, but it is a normal developmental stage. This is what I meant when I said I studied a lot of child development.
Yeah.
And under Masterson, we read child development again with an eye to borderline personality disorder, which was believed by many of the developmental people to start around the age of 2 from abandonment or intermittent, caretaking.
Yeah.
So in this developmental stage, they need an idealizable figure. If they already have contempt for their parent, they're past the stage of repair. We're going to go back. They're automatically going to go back to wherever they left off. So if they have a positive transference onto me, that tells me they left off with a positive transference and they're capable of seeing me as a good person, or in object relations language, a good object, and they need to continue that. If they see me if suddenly they see me as a horrible person and, out to get them in some fashion, then they have a negative transference onto me that is also important, because that's where they left off with their parents.
Yeah.
And sometimes they will start with the positive one, and then they will switch to years later the negative transference that they ended, because a lot of my clients are not talking to their parents.
Yeah.
Their parents either threw them out or they split on their parents. It was mutually agreed. They didn't have good relationships in most cases with their parents in adulthood.
Yeah.
So it's so I have to take the role I'm assigned and do good with it.
Yeah.
So if I'm assigned the negative role, I have to work on helping them see my positive side and being realistic.
So based on all these, what you know already about psychotherapy, what message would you give to your 16-year-old self?
My 16-year-old self, have fun, honey. You'll all be okay.
And
that's the message I gave then. Do you know, when I was 16, I was homeless.
Yeah, I know.
So I had a good time and I learned a lot. I didn't have a bad time. My 16-year-old self discovered that it was easier being on my own, alone, cold, with no job history. I had to go to work, than it was living with any of my parents.
Yeah, I know.
Now, I had 3 parents by then. I had a biological father, a narcissistic father, then back with my biological father, and a mother who was intermittently psychotic. When she wasn't psychotic, she was over-empathic, and had poor boundaries and was in denial about anything being wrong because she couldn't tolerate being angry at anyone. So I found life easier. I didn't have a problem at 16, other than I was very cold, and it really wasn't a big problem. Once I found Greenwich Village and folk music and other homeless kids, I was very fortunate. The time I was 16, I was not alone. There was so many in the 60s. It was the 60s. There were so many children like me, runaways, throwaways, castaways, I call us. And so, I had fun.
Is there a particular client transformation that has stayed with you over the decades?
There's so many. I will dedicate this workshop, this interview, to Gucci Bob.
Oh.
Gucci Bob was the first narcissistic client I had that I was successful with, that I did all Gestalt therapy with. And he was so difficult, but I love him. And he said, you know, you're going to miss me. He's passed on, he's dead. And he left, it took 10 years. I will tell you in the book, there's interventions. He gave me permission to talk about him. I call him Gucci Bob because his first session, he showed up in Gucci clothing, fancy designer clothing, and he spent the entire session explaining to me what was special and interesting and expensive about it, because that's what he did to support himself.
Yeah.
And he was a screamer. He used to yell so loud. He was triggered every day so often, and he had no idea how to get out of it. So he used to walk for miles. I could tell when he was triggered because he would change clothing, and he would wear old clothing with holes, and he wouldn't shave. And this is a man who's usually impeccable in a blazer and whatever, lives in a fancy neighborhood. And I'll just tell you the one intervention I remember the best, okay?
Yeah. Okay.
And it's maybe they will read it in your book, is one day he is screaming at me so loud, and I'm working so hard. I'm thinking of everything I can possibly do or say to be helpful. I'm very good at experiments. I'm a creative person. I did art, handcrafts. So experiments I can do. I'm making up experiments. Nothing's working. Suddenly, I get an idea. So I go with it. I say, Bob, please stop for a second. The good thing about Bob is he had a good sense of humor when he wasn't triggered. When he was triggered, zero sense of humor. Narcissists don't find it funny. But other than that, he was very funny, and he got therapy, even though he was only of average intelligence. And that was one of his problems he would talk about, because he felt so insecure because he hadn't gone on to college and graduate school. He pretended a lot that he had, but most of the people he knew had. And he paid people to do his homework in high school, things like that. So he was very ashamed about this, which was part of the narcissism thing.
Yeah.
So I say, Bob, I'm going to try something. Please try it with me. He looks at me. Okay. Deep voice. So I say, please, he was healthy. I have him stand on this chair or a stool. I forget what it was, but it was safe. So he's way above me, talking about idealization. I make him way above me. I get down on the ground on my hands and knees like this. And I look up at him and I say, Bob, is there anything I could do at all that would be right and good that you could think of? He pauses, he stops screaming. He's looking literally down on me. See, I've made this physical. I've taken something that's metaphorically, he's looking down at me and screaming, and I'm begging and pleading, but I'm with presenting him with one intervention after another. So I made it into a physical show. And I'm down there like this. Well, he looks at me, he pauses, and then he cracks up laughing. And he says, I guess not. There's nothing you couldn't do. And then he was calm. And we both were laughing again. And I said, okay, you can get off now. Can I get up? And I got up, and we had the rest of the session. So, yes, I remember Gucci Bob very well.
Great. It was kind of exaggeration. So like exaggerate his narcissism extra.
That's right. One of the things I learned in early Gestalt therapy is if someone doesn't know what they're feeling, sometimes asking them to exaggerate it, just like a comedy, can give them, in the exaggeration, you can find what they're feeling that is being, expressed in a more subtle or dignified or metaphorical way. So that was the Gestalt therapy method that I was using, that, after a while, I know them. And so I really didn't have to think about this intervention. It wasn't like I sat there thinking out the intervention. I thought, get on your hands and knees in front of him and get him on a chair. Okay. And that's what I did.
One more thing about your book, that in the end there is this vocabulary that you wrote for people. And I know that's your favorite part, one of them.
Well, it's one of my favorite parts because I wanted it for me. It was, here I have if it's hard for me with a PhD in psychology to read the books that are, I understood once I started taking these courses that we needed more therapists who could do personality disorders. And I also understood that they weren't going to spend 15 years like I did. They didn't have the time, the money, and the energy, the inclination, but they could learn the basics of it in a lot less time. Even if I could just teach them the basics in one book, I thought, that would be enough. But then I realized one of the things that held me back when I was reading is in order to teach them the basics, this was for therapists. I wrote this book to train therapists, but the general public loves it too because of the glossary.
Accidentally.
I said the thing was, I could not remember, like I cannot remember now, what Masterson was calling his split part object relations. I know that there was a sadistic object, a persecutory object, and the persecuted part. I mean, I understood it. I just couldn't remember the names. So I said, well, I'm going to start writing down a glossary. I can't define every psych word, but most of the people were going to be therapists. There's going to be a lot of unfamiliar language, and they may not know how I'm using it. When I found out that Otto Kernberg, Gerald Adler, all the therapists were redefining these terms in different ways. Like you have closet narcissist, covert narcissist, vulnerable narcissist. Yeah. They're all talking about the same thing. And, so I wrote the glossary, Greenberg's glossary of definitions.
Yeah.
So that anyone, at any point that people become confused, and I define it in the thing, you can just go to the glossary and see what does she mean.
Yeah, it's great.
And today I would make it even simpler. See, I felt obligated to put in the glossary the hard terms because I wanted the trainees to be able to look up under what my problem was, I didn't know the names of the disorders. I didn't know how to look them up. And I couldn't find them in an analytic dictionary because they didn't have object relations terms.
Yeah.
So I just want to keep it simple. I would even simplify it more if I were doing it today.
Yeah, but it has an additional value in Hungary that we study Gestalt therapy in English. And it's difficult to translate one-to-one from English to Hungarian some words, some professional words, and your vocabulary helps with it.
Oh, I'm so glad about that. Well, that makes it worth it, doesn't it?
Yeah, wonderful.
That's what I want to hear. It helps.
Okay.
Those are the words. Tell me that again.
So when we worked with the Hungarian edition, then there was two main points when I was like, what shall I do? One is that we kept splash as the word. So as you use it, we use it in Hungarian too, because the meaning is the very same. The other point when I was thinking a lot is how shall we use the word shit? Because, in Hungary, we don't use the word shit in professional books.
Yes.
So, and I asked several people and, professions, everybody, what to do with the word of shit. And there was no chance we had to use it. So we kept the word shit in Hungarian.
Thank you. I will tell you what Masterson did.
What?
Masterson fought with me. Originally, that chapter was written for Masterson. Masterson required that we who were on faculty for him, and by that time I was on faculty, we write articles for his books. We take turns writing articles for his newsletter. So I wrote that article, which I knew Masterson would find interesting because I have Carl Abraham, it's a scholarly article in its own way, but he objected to the word shit. So I said, well, the point is that's the word they're using. So what we finally agreed on, because was SH, then a star, and then a T.
Yeah.
And that's what he published in the newsletter, and that's what I kept. So that's one of the things where we do it in English. It may not work in Hungarian. Is we take something that would be a bad word, and we will take out, like we'll start it with one letter, we'll put the last letter, maybe another letter, and then we'll put we'll put star, star, star.
Yeah, I didn't think of that. It's a good,
yeah.
Whatever.
Well,
and the third thing is that I know how much it means to you, the symbols, the heart, the star, and the key, and also the tree. So if you,
yes,
I knew that it's important for you, and in Hungarian edition, I try to plan something which has the meaning what you had originally, but a little bit like simple, more simple than your tarot kind of.
Yes. You did a fabulous job. I love what you did. The moment I saw that, I thought, well, this is brilliant, that you really understood it. And you were referencing it, and that was more than sufficient. You did a very good job. Better than I would have imagined. I really appreciated how what a good job you did and how beautiful it was.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It was a pleasure, and it was a wonderful work with your book, and to know you better and better through the videos and your articles and Quora and everything. So I really appreciate your presence in my life.
Oh, thank you.
And I think I'm telling this in the speech of thousands of people on the earth, for sure. In Gestalt
well,
field.
I so appreciate that. Thank you. And I hope that the book does very, 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 very well for you. I'm a private extrovert.
Oh.
I like people, but when I started working with borderline, the last thing I wanted was people showing up. My office was in my house. And I didn't want people to recognize me on the street. Nobody ever recognizes me anyway, because they always imagine I'm a much more serious, gray-haired little old lady, even when I wasn't a little old lady. And they're always disappointed I'm frivolous me. They can't believe I'm the one that wrote those things. That used to be my experience over and over again. They would meet me at a conference, and they'd be incredibly angry at me. Because I'd be in the corner. I studied to be a belly dancer. You know, Middle Eastern dance. I can do that.
Oh.
I studied belly dancer or psychologist. That was my choice. I got fired from my job at the belly dance studio. I went back to psych school.
So next conference, start with belly dancing and then start the conference topic. Wonderful.
So I'm an 80-year-old belly dancer. You know what I mean?
Wow.
That's not what they expect. I'll be in the corner doing my belly dancing because my back hurt, and it loosens me up. And they're expecting someone with a big skirt and it's very serious. And here I am with waist-length curls. In the picture, that one that most people have of me, I'm kind of hiding how long my hair is.
Oh, don't do that. So
yeah, I even, I'd rather write the stuff than have pictures taken.
Yeah. So I encourage you to make new photos because you are
okay.
Really.
Do you want to make them for me?
Yeah, we can try. We will make screenshots from this video and I will send it to you, okay?
That would be wonderful. And then I give you permission to use them everywhere. And, the Germans actually sent a photographer because I was in Die Zeit, whatever that magazine is. It's like the cross between, they tell me, the New York Times and the Wall Street Journal. Very big deal. They did a 5 or 6 page interview with me. It took months and months and months to make that interview look like a spontaneous conversation.
Yeah.
And they published me. And then they sent, in New York, they hired someone to take a picture of me. But the people came on the hottest day of the year, and I'm sweating in this picture, and they love it. My hair's a mess. I'm sweating. I look very serious and uncomfortable, and they love the picture. I thought they weren't going to use it, because I like pictures of me smiling. The German picture. So, you know, it all depends what you like.
Yeah, okay, thank you. So, Elinor.
But you can use whatever you like.
Thank you. And I will send you too. And I appreciate your time and insights and this willingness to share your time with me. And I really enjoyed your company. And thank you for understanding my lack of English. And otherwise, it was a fluent anyway. So thank you so much.
Again. It wasn't your lack of English. It was that it wasn't quite loud enough in many cases. And I just have to get used to a Hungarian accent and then we'll be fine.
Yeah, okay.
I have to go.
Yeah. See you. Bye-bye. Bye. Ha értékesnek találtátok ezt a beszélgetést, ne felejtsetek el lájkolni, feliratkozni, megosztani valakivel, akinek szintén hasznára válhat ez a sok minden, amit Elinor megosztott velünk.